The Senate will come to order. Senator Kupek.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to impose a call of the Senate.
The Senate is now under call. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and that the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those who oppose say no. The motion prevails. Members, in our Senate tradition, we usually have a chaplain here and we ask for prayer. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're able to think about and reflect today through a moment of silence, prayer, and reflection. Two things that I'd ask that you think about. You know, one famous speech from Theodore Roosevelt was talking about being in the arena and how it was so important to be in the arena and rise to the occasion as opposed to joining those who are in the audience of just criticizing those who are in the arena. I also think it's important for us to reflect on Dr. Martin Luther King's words, one of his famous speeches centered around service. And he said that you know, if you want to be great, serve. And he looked at and redefined service and greatness through the lens of community. And he also says, if you want to be great, serve, and anyone can be great because they can serve. So I hope that you reflect on this moment and the fact that we are standing in a very important time, not for ourselves, but for the people who we are to serve. And so I hope that you will reflect upon that and think about the work that we have to continue to do today for the people we serve. With that, if we can have a moment of silence. Thank you, members. With that being said, the secretary will take the roll. Oh, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I forgot to tell you, after I say those little words, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, members. You remember the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so very much. With that being stated, the secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Barr, Bolden, Carlson, Champion, Clark, Coleman, Swadzinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Drazkowski, Duckworth, Farnsworth, Fateh, Frentz, Green, Grunhagen, Gustafson, Hochschild, Herr, Heinzmann, Hemmingson-Jaeger, Hoffman, Holmstrom, Housley, Howe, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson-Stewart, Klein, Curran, Kroon, Kunish, Kupek, Lang, Latz, Liskey, Limmer, Lucero, Mann, Marty, Matthews, Mayquaid, McEwen, Miller, Mohammed, Murphy, Nelson, Umu Verbaten, Pappas, Pa, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rasmussen, Rest, Seeberger, Utke, Weber, Wiesenberg, Westland, Westrom, Wickland, Zhang.
Members, a quorum is present. The following members intend to vote from a remote location under Rule 40.7. Senator Carlson. Members, if you want to follow along, I am reading from the Senate agenda dated Sunday, May 17, 2026. We will begin at the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the first message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following Senate files herewith returned. Senate File Number 3891, a bill for an act relating to agriculture, allowing eggs to be donated past their quality assurance date. Senate File Number 4339, a bill for an act relating to utilities, modifying certain requirements governing the excavation notice system, including to require electronic positive response. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, no action is required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has adopted the recommendation and report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 4282 and repassed said bill in accordance with the report of the committee, so adopted. Senate File Number 4282, a bill for an act relating to forecast adjustments. Senate File Number 4282 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, again, no action is required. There is a message to be read.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has adopted the recommendation report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 3432 and repassed said bill in accordance with the report of the committee, so adopted. Senate File Number 3432, a bill for an act relating to public safety, requiring removal of identifying equipment and insignia from emergency vehicles sold to the public. Senate File Number 3432 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, again, no action required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following House file herewith transmitted. House File Number 2354 and House File Number 4384. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
No action required. There's a message to read at... Okay, we did that one. Thank you. We're going to the fourth order of business, which is first reading of House bills. The House files have been given its reading and referred as indicated. I would also like to refer to House File 2354. That is also a part of it, and that particular file is referred to Finance. As I mentioned, the House files have been given. The Secretary will read the title.
House File Number 2354, a bill for an act relating to consumer protection, adding and modifying provisions governing medical assistance fraud.
Now the House files have been given their first reading and referred as indicated. Members will go to the eighth order of business, which is introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated with no modifications. We'll move to the ninth order of business, which is motions and resolutions. We will adopt the author's motion as one motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, I'll now call on Senator Hur for a motion. Senator Hur.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate File 2077, which had been laid on the table pursuant to Joint Rule 3.02A, be taken from the table.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Hurd, the next part of your motion.
Mr. President, I move that the conference committee of 3 members be appointed by the subcommittees on conference committee on the part of the Senate to act with a like conference committee to be appointed on the part of the House on Senate File 2077. Thank you.
Members, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of her motion say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. I'll now call on Senator Murphy for a motion. Senator Murphy, this is for the brief recess in order to, for the purpose of appointing conference committee members.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for a brief recess for the purpose of appointing conference committee members.
On that motion to recess, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is now in recess for the purpose of bringing forth conference committee members. Members, the Senate will come to order. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is there a privileged report at the desk?
There is a privileged report at the desk. The Secretary will read the report.
Senator Murphy from the Subcommittee on Conference Committees recommends that the following senators be, and they hereby are, appointed as a conference committee on Senate File Number 2077. Senators Herr, Putnam, and Lang. Senator Murphy moves the foregoing appointments be approved.
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, President Champion. I'm going to move a recess to the call of the President. DFL members, we're going to go up and caucus on the third floor.
Senator Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. President. And before we go into recess, I'd just like to take a moment on personal privilege here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. And good morning, everybody, and happy final day of session, and most importantly, happy Sette Mai as well. That is the Norwegian Constitution Day. So we've got a number of items in the back to celebrate the big day, but the reason why we want to talk a little bit about it is because May 17th in 1814 is when Norway adopted its constitution, which makes it one of the oldest constitutions in the world, which is exciting, and that's why U.S. always recognizes Norway on this day. Minneapolis, of all places, has the largest population outside of Norway, and 14% of this state has a Norwegian heritage. So we just wanted to celebrate the day. There's some things back there. Senator Pa had brought in some very exciting Thai food earlier on with all the reds and greens and very fluorescent colors in it. That's kind of how Norwegian food is too. We've got a lot of whites and off-whites and near translucents and a lot of potatoes as well. So please go and enjoy. Senators Dorian Clark and Karen Housley were also part of this too. So thank you so much. Appreciate that. And Senate Republicans will be caucusing after the recess is called upstairs. Thank you.
On the motion to recess, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is now in recess to the call of the President.